자, 일어서시겠습니다. 자, 경배 드리겠습니다. 차렷, 경배. 바로
앉으세요.
예, 박수로.
Everybody's sitting on the floor today. How are you? Not enough chairs for everybody? Tom, how you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
What do you want to talk about? The world's blowing up everywhere.
何について話しましょうか。全世界を見たらいろいろ事件が起きて、爆発的に起きてますね。
Have you been hearing the second king talk?
どういう意味か分かりましたか。
It gets stronger and stronger every day.
もう毎日のように事件がどんどんどんどん
Sounds more like King's father every day too.
時代が分か
Did you see that hurricane reports on what happened down in Texas with Hurricane Harvey?
ハリケーン、台風が発生したテキサスを強化したんですけど、ニュースに結構あれが
They got over 55 inches, almost 60 inches of rain there.
55インチや60インチぐらいの雨が降雪がでした。
That's a lot of water.
本当に一番にあります。
I mean, it flooded the whole city of Houston. Houston is a big
ヒュース
city.
トンが水なんですけど、ヒューストンっていう場所は本当に場所が
It's about 6 million people, including the suburbs.
ヒューストンはおそらく600万人ぐらいの人口なんですけれども、
It basically shut that whole city down.
ヒューストン全体が破壊になってしまいました。
But it's amazing that, given the size of the hurricane and the immense nature of the flooding, that there's only a few people who died.
まあでもこの台風の大きさと、そして洪水の災害の規模を考えては、死傷者がそこまで出なかったのは、ある意味災害です。
I think only like 50 or 60 people died, right? What's the final death count? Somewhere around there. Right? That Hurricane Harvey was, in terms of rain, was much worse than Katrina, which hit New Orleans. Like,
ハービー台風は
was that almost 10 years ago?
それにカトリーナ、そのニューオーリンズを強化したカトリーナの台風よりも規模が大きかったんですけれども、
But in Katrina, how many people died? Like 7,000?
カトリーナの時は7000人が死亡しました。
What was the difference?
その違いは何だったんでしょう。
For all of you in Asia, what was the difference between the hurricane response between Katrina and Harvey, in which the death toll was so different?
まあカトリーナとハービー、台風の大きさは同じくらいだったんですけれども、死亡者の数という観点から
Federal versus local.
Now let the Asians
差が
figure it out.
私はハービーの影響を受けたのが、なぜこのように差が出たと思われますか。
Oh, you're Westerner. That's the question for the Asian people.
한국이나 일본에서 오신 분들께서 질문인데 두 가지 두 번의 탑승이 있었는데
Speak louder. You can't hear me back there? What do you think? What's the difference between the two hurricanes? How come one killed 7,000 and one killed?
카트리나台風が있을 때는 7,000명이라는 사망자를 발생시켰는데 이번에는
Racism. But we know who the only racist is in America.
취수에 대한 기반 시설이 아마 차이가 있었을 겁니다.
浸水に対する基盤の施設の、その構造の差だと思います。
Kiban, she said.
Yeah, it's the basic structure in cases of flood and other kind of natural disaster. So he's saying that probably in Houston or in Texas there was a better
I don't think so.
저는 좀 다르게 생각하고 있는데요.
私はまあそうではないと思います。
Who else?
他に
다른 분 안 계십니까?
誰かいませんか？
From Asia.
アジアなら
This is a difficult question for Asians to answer.
제가 생각하기에는 굉장히 어려운 질문이라고 생각합니다. 한국이나 일본에서 주십해주세요.
Harvey and Katrina differences?
Yeah. To the hurricane.
인콩?
like man-made?
That had nothing to do with income.
Katrina was a failure of the levees.
Well, that wasn't the reason why all the people died, the levee failure.
That was racist.
いろいろな仮説が出てるんですけれども、カトリーナの場合はそういった対策が失敗した、ある人はまあそういう人種差別的な内容があって、そのようにカトリーナは被害を
And
受け死亡した
normal
人
people
が
volunteered to help.
Yeah, I mean, this is
まあ
the
テ
big
キサスの
difference.
場合は
The difference between Katrina and Harvey is
カトリーナとハービーの
centralized planning versus self-organizing volunteer rescue.
計画者、その国定計画書と
카트리나가 있었을 때는
カトリーナの時はその
중앙 집권화된
政府が
구조의
中央
그 정보가
中央集権的な計画を持っ
이번에는
て
스스로 그
손을
발생할
기다리-
수 있는 구조의 정보가
対策を立てて人を救急
Katrina
救
was
したんですけ
a
れども、このテキサスの場合
centralized
は
government
市民
response.
たちが自ら防止という形で、そして自らお互いを救命し合い
Harvey was
助け合
free
ったんです
market
よね。
rescue.
하비는
なのでカトリーナの場合は中央集権的な
자리를 잡고
そういう対策だ対策で、ハービーの場合は自由
That's the
市場
fundamental
的な
difference
そ
between
の
the
概
two
念
hurricanes.
が
가장
あっ
큰
て、
차이점
市民たちが働いたということですよね。そ
When
れが
you
一
look
番
at
大きな
when you look at what Katrina happened in Katrina, President Bush sent
カトリーナの場合は
FEMA down there, and the FEMA director who worked for the federal government started giving orders to the governor and to the local people and telling them what to do and started bringing in government officials to close off the roads and prevent people from rescuing other
人
people.
たちを現場に送っ
명령을
て、その
내리는
フィーマの人たち
구조
が
방에서 있었어요.
そこのニューオーリンズの知事だろうが誰だろうがに指示を出すような
Katrina was a perfect example of government central
対策を
planning.
立てたんですよね。でカトリーナはそういう意味で、そういうやり方でやったがゆえに、死亡者が多かった。
So what did the government central planners do?
그 중앙
で、その中央政権の
정부가 어떤
政府
역할을
の高官たち
Were they trying to save the
カ
lives?
トリーナの場合において、
사람들의
その
목숨을
市
구하기
民たち
위해서
の
노력을
命を
했어요.
救おうとされ
They
て
were
ました。
breaking into people's houses and stealing their guns.
いいえ、その政府機関の
다른 목숨을 구하기 위해
その場に来たのではなく、
개인의 집에
市民たちの
They
家に
went
入っ
into
て
the people's houses and stole their guns, and they let old people die in the old people's home, and let people die in the poor income
救わな
areas.
ければな
Let
ら
them-
ない老人がいる。
drowned
そ
to
の
death.
老人をほっといて、その老人たちを
What that they did exactly what communist dictators do. That's Katrina is the communist dictator
まあこれは
response.
どういう
Exactly what Kim Il Sung was doing in North
共
Korea.
産主義のメンタリティです。
정권에서
キ
보여줄
ム・イル
수
ソン
있는
みたいな
예를
政権の下で見られるような現象です。それがカトリーナの
똑같은 행동을 보여줬어요.
結果だったわけです。
And in Katrina, the government officials came in and said, "These are the rules. You have to follow the rules, and we're going to use our policemen to enforce the rules. And you can't bring this vehicle in this vehicle. You got to have these regulations and these permits."
連邦政府の職員たちが出て、
정부에서
市民たちはみんな我々の言うことを聞かなければならない。指示した通りに動かなければならない。そして警察は市民たちがちゃんとその秩序のある行動を取るように監視しなければならない。そういうような構造で、
What was the response in Harvey?
이건 합의의
だけれど
경우는
も、それとは裏腹にハービーの場合はどうでしたか？
You know, from the governor of Texas to the president of the United States, the president said, "Hey, look, governor, you're in charge."
テキサス、そのアメリカの大統領、ハービーの時はアメリカの大統領はテキサスの指示に対して、
그래서 물어봤는데
テキサスの指示、お前
대통령이
が
너의
中心だ、お
주고
前が
내가 가장 빨리
責任者だ。
We'll just support you. If you need help from us, we'll give you the help that you ask
そ
for.
れで、もしも連邦政府の支援とか支えが必要な場合は、
And then the governor told to his local people,
それで、その
"You're in charge.
テキ
You
サ
do what
ス
that's
知
necessary.
事は、その住民たちに何を言ったかというと、
We'll just support what you need from us."
合わなければならない住民たちが主人だと。
그거를 우리는 뒤에
And so at the local level, what did they do? Did they make rules on rescuing?
なので、
rules for
それがローカル
지역사회, 지역 정부는
の
어떻게 또
地域社
반응했을까?
会においてはどのように地域社会に
No, they threw out all the rules. No more rules.
またルールとかそういう
ルール
指示とか
ルール
全く計画で動い
우리가
て
없는 상태에서
They threw all the rules out. Bring in your monster trucks, bring in your bass
大事ではあ
boats.
りません。
It doesn't matter how you get in there. Bring in a rubber raft.
まあ人をより多くの命を救命するためにボートだろうが何だろうが必要であるすべての手段を導入
Emergency
して
worker, you don't need qualification. You just come in and bring your boat and help people out. That's all you have to do.
응급 상황에서는 자격증이 필요한 것도 아니고 여러 가지 노력이 필요한 것도 아니고 그 상황에서
No licensing,
重要ではありません。
no inspection of vehicles,
필요한 행동 지침
なのでこの
no searching for guns.
もしくはそれを運転している人が
Everybody, you can take your gun wherever you
違
want.
法な車なのかじゃないのか
여러 가지
そういうのは全然
복잡한
ル
룰
ールが
자체가
適用する必要がないわけですよね。
So that's the difference.
それが違い
그게
で
가장
した
큰 차이점이었어요.
One is a free market response, the other is a command and control
自由マー
response.
ケット的な自由市場的な
자유시장
外人のメンタリティでもう一つは中国
One is North Korea, one used to be South
まあ
Korea.
要するに一つは
자유의지에 맡겨온 거였고요.
やり
이거는 뭐
方でもう一つは
다름이
もう
아니고
ちょっと民主的
북한과 남한의 차이라고 볼 수 있습니다.
But now South Korea is becoming like North Korea. You're becoming communist, more and more communist every year.
지금 남한의 상황을 보면은 점점 더 북한
韓国
강도가
は
되는
少しずつ共産化しつつあります。
This is the strange thing about Korean people.
これが
이게 가장 흥미로운 점이라고 볼 수 있습니다.
Well, it's about all people, especially Asians.
特別な特性です。まあ韓国の方
The
だけではなくて
prosperity Asia has is because they didn't listen. They had free markets and didn't listen to the government.
アジア諸国
But
を
now
見た時に
that they
傾向性
become
としては
prosperous, they want to make the government big and own everything.
アジアの諸国を見たら自由市場を導入してからそのアジア諸国は発展しました。だけれどもおかしい話にその発展した後にさらに政府を大きくしようとするそういった傾向性、そういった動きが出るようになってきました。
But if the government gets big and owns everything and does everything, what happens?
でも政府が大きくなって全てを所有することになったら、国家することになったら、
You get a disaster response like Katrina, or you get North Korea.
まあカトリーナみたいな本当に失敗した救援対策とか
북한과 비슷하게 변해갈
対策もしくはまあ北朝鮮みたいな体制になってしまいます。
What do you think about that example?
まあこのカトリーナと
두 가지
を
상황에
見
대해서
たとして
어떻게
もこの
생각하십니까?
例に対してどのように思いますか？
Does
こ
that
の
make
事例
you
に
think?
対してこの事例を見ても
많은 생각
なんかいろいろ考えるようになりますが、どう思われますか？
Any thoughts?
どう思われますか？意見のある方は意見を聞いて
What do you think about that?
どうですか？
You want big government, but big government just makes your life
も
miserable.
う大きな政府が欲しいですが、大きな政府はただ皆様
It doesn't make you safer, it doesn't protect your life, it doesn't make you richer.
特に皆様の命を守るわけでもないですし、皆様をもっとお金持ちにするわけではないですし、人生をもっと充実にするだけですよ。
So why do you want big government?
왜 큰
そうな
정부를
のになぜ大きな政府
What are you going to do with it?
求めますか？
How's it going to help your life?
大きな政府を作ることによって自分の人生に足しになることはありますか？
Anybody want to answer that question?
皆さんどうですか？それに対して何か意見あり
대답을
ますか？
해보실 분 계십니까?
I mean, you think about it. What is the only thing a government is good at doing?
考えてみてください。政府が一番
정부가 가장 잘하는 일이
Spending money.
무엇일까요?
Well, it does one thing better than that.
Taxing.
政府は何が上手ですか？
Killing you!
人を殺す、人をまあその
The only thing a government's good at doing is killing its citizens. That's it.
人の命を守れないことですよね。その市民たちの
Killing, coercing, beating.
守
중국가
れ
가장
ないのが
잘하는 거라고 할 수 있는
政府が上手
시민들,
な役割
시민들에게
なんでしょうか。
I mean, if you look at in the last 100 years,
사람들 많이 제공해 주고
how many people have been killed by murderers and
100
criminals
年の歴史を見たときに
all over the world?
全世界で犯罪者に
전
殺
세계적으로
され
얼마나
た人
많은
たちが何人ぐらいになるでしょうか。
정부에 의해서
No, how many people have died by criminals, not by the government?
얼마나 많은 사람들이 범죄에 의해서 사망하는
何人
사람을
が
생각하시죠?
世界中で何人が犯罪者によって殺された
Last 100 years.
100年の間で
About 5 million people have lost their lives due to criminal.
500만 명 정도가 범죄에 의해서
それは犯罪者による死亡者の数
That's a lot of people who died because of criminals, right?
まあ500万人って言ったら小さな
상당히
数
많은
字ではありますよね
But in the last 100 years, how many innocent people were killed by government
100年の間
genocide?
과거 100년 동안에 얼마나 많은 사람들이 범죄에 의해서
の人が人間が死亡されました死亡しました
무고한 시민들이
About 240 million people were killed by government genocide.
2억
2億4000万
사망을 했을 것입니다.
人ぐらいいろいろな
That's innocent people just trying to make a living. Genocided by the government of the world.
무고한 시민들이었는데 정부의
た
제거
だ純真にそして一生懸命人生を生きたいようなそういった人たちが
The government's 40 times more likely to kill you than a homicidal, murdering
こ
criminal.
のようにして犯罪者による死傷者の数そして政府の大虐殺による死傷者の数
범죄보다도
を
약
比較
4배
したと
정도
きにじゃあ政府によって大虐殺させる可能性が40倍も高いわけです
Would you trust a murderer to protect your life?
そういうふうに考えて皆さん犯罪者が皆様の命を守ってくれると皆様思いますか
Would you trust a rapist to protect your daughter's virginity?
強姦をする犯罪者があなた方の娘をに手を触れずに守ってくれるその純潔を守ると皆様思いますか
Then what makes you think you can trust the government to protect your life?
じゃあなぜ政府が皆様
And
の
your
命
property?
を
많은 사람들이
守っ
정보를
て
이렇게 믿고
救ってくれ
따를
る
수
と
있는
信じることができますかそういうふうに思うことはできるんでしょうか
No.
That's the problem. You can't if you're a thinking person.
よくこの点考えてみる必要があります
That's what people realized. That's what that was a revolution here in America with the American Revolution.
アメリカの革命を見
미국
たとき
혁명
にアメリ
때
カの市
바로
民た
이러한
ちはそれ
점들이
を
많은
それに
시민들이
気づいた
고민을
んです
하고
Because
답을 찾으려고
because of Protestant Christianity
アメ
and
リ
the
カのキ
Reformation.
リスト教の改新教によって
기독교
そのキリスト教徒たちは神様と自分の
People began to ask the question, why do we need the government above us?
でそれでその自分たちはどのような発想を持つようになったかというと
세고만
な
좀
ぜ
빠르게 됐죠.
政府が自分たちの
이걸 따랐군요.
と神様の間にを挟む必要があるのかということですね。
And when they study history and scholarship, people who honestly study history can see that the majority of suffering of humanity, of human beings, is caused by government action.
本当に客観的に歴史を勉強したならば、そしてそういう歴史を客観的に
역사를
勉強した学者たちは政府がどのようにしてこのような人類に
보통과
多くの
정부에 의해서
罪と悲惨な
만들어진 경우가 많은 걸 볼 수 있습니다.
And so the great enlightenment of the American Revolution was the realization that if you wanted to increase the prosperity and happiness of the people and let the people get closer to God, what you need to restrain is not the people's freedom, but the government's freedom.
でアメリカの改革は市民たちはそれに気づいたんですよね。市民たちの神様との関係をより強くするため、そして市民たち自体の自由をより多く、市民たちがより自由になるためには政府の役割を制限しなければならないということに気づいたわけです。
If the people want to be free, the government has to be in prison.
もしも市民たちが本当に自由になりたければ
시민들이 자유를 얻기 위해서는
政府を
정부를
監
분명히
獄に
가져가야
やらなければなりません。
If the government is free, then you will be in prison.
政府が自由に
정부가 자유를 얻게 되면은
皆様が
시민들이
監獄に入れられる
감옥에 가둬지게 되는 것이죠.
That's what communism is all about. The
Yeah.
government's free,
共産主義
and all the people are in prison. The whole country's in
政府
prison.
が自分のやりたい放題やって市民たちは何もできなく監獄の中に入れられるような生活が強いられるわけです。
So for those people in Asia who say, let's make the government big, you're saying, let's become a slave. That's all you're saying.
アジア諸国で政府が大きくし政府の介入がもっと必要だって言っているような人たちはそういったやり方は
And this is
政府
the
の奴隷になろうって言っているような
this is the great problem with Asian culture.
これがアジアの文化の一番大きな問題
아시아 문화에 있어서 가장 큰 문제점.
You love your slavery too much.
皆様は皆さん自身が奴隷であることを
오해화되어가는 거를 너무나 좋아하는 것 같습니다.
You're too happy to kill off all your neighbors just to be a government bureaucrat.
정부의 타락과
政府
세계에
のそういった感情
간접
性
들어가고
ですか
있고
その
그런 게 너무나
手段になることを
일상화되어가고 있는 그런 감각이 없이 되는 것 같지.
That's why Asians have been so miserable throughout history, except for the last couple of decades.
なのでアジアの歴史を見たら本当に悲惨な市民たちが悲惨な歴史だったんですよね。
아시아 쪽에
Because the heavy yoke of government.
なぜかというと政府の
그 가장 큰 이유가 바로
政府の
큰
介入が
정부라고 할 수 있습니다.
多かったわけです。
Our freedom comes when we understand
我々の自由というの
that we are the inheritors of this world. Because God is the creator, and He's our Father.
神様が我々のお父さんであり、我々の創造主であることがあるように、我々がその創造者だ、創造
And
者である
because God is our Father, we have the rights to inheritance, the right to sovereignty.
父ならば
하나님이
我
우리의
々
아버지이시되
は
우리가
その
모든
自分の父の主権を相続するそういった立場に立っているわけです。
We are the kings of our nation.
我々は我
우리가
々の
바로 이 나라의
王国の
주인입니다.
王妃なわけです。
The government has to be our slave.
政府というのは我々の奴隷の立場に立たなけれ
우리의
ばなりません。
위치에 있는 것과 마찬가지죠.
In a prison, who has the guns?
監獄の中では誰が拳銃を持っていますか。監獄を見たとき誰が拳銃を持っていますか。
Do the prison guards have the guns, or do the prisoners have the guns?
교도 관들이 가지고 있을까요? 아니면 교수들이 가지고 있을까요?
そういった監獄を守っている人たちが拳銃を所持していますか。
Who has the guns in the prison?
누가 총을 가지고
そ
있을까요?
の警備員たちですよね。
So if we're going to put the government into prison, who has to have the guns?
なので政府を監獄に入れるならば誰が拳銃を所持するべきでしょう
정부가
か。
감옥이라고 생각했을 때 누가 총을 가지고 있어야 된다고 생각하십니까?
It's very simple. If we want to put the government in prison, then the people have to have the guns, and the governments have to have no
정부와
guns.
감옥을
市民たちが拳銃
직접
を所
비교해
持しな
본다
ければなら
그러면은
ない。
바로
It's really that simple.
나라를 지킨
本当に
시민들이
難しい
무기를 가지고 있어야 되는 것이죠.
Those are the rights of sovereignty. The rights of what are the rights of
それがまさ
sovereignty?
しく主権の権利です。主権の権利って言ったら何
What does it mean to be a king?
王であることは
주권의
何を言う
하나의
でしょうか。
권리라고 할 수 있습니다. 왕이 된다는 게 어떤 의미입니까?
What are the rights of kings?
王の権
왕의
限
권리가 무엇입니까?
What?
깡.
Well, the rights of king is territory.
王はまず領土があります。
That's what is territory. That's private property.
領土っていうのは何ですか。私有地です。
And the right to defend that property with force and
そ
arms.
して私有資産があるならばそれ
자유롭게
を自
영토를
然
가질 수
に
있는 점이고요.
守らなければならない。
That's
그런
arms.
영토를 지킬 수 있는 권리를 가지는 것이
私有資産
바로
とか
왕이에요.
私有地を
Because you have the right to property and you have the right to guns,
力が
then you have the freedom of conscience and belief.
そして武器って言ったらやっぱり拳銃なんですけれども、自分が信じる、そして自分の良心を中心としたそういった私有地を守ることができる
소리가 안 나요.
権利
소리가 안 나요?
権利です。
통역하세요. You gotta speak up. So that's the interesting problem we see in the world.
흥미로운 문제점이죠.
The big problem has always been government.
가장 큰 문제점은 항상 정부로 발생돼요.
It's a free people which make a prosperous society.
本当に繁栄するのは社会を作るのは
중앙사회를
自由
만드는
市民
거는
たちです。
항상
自由な人々が
위해서 만들어준다고
And all freedom is a gift from God. Free will is God's gift to us because we are His children.
우리가 받은
自由というものは、そして自由意志というものは神様から我々に与えられた贈り物です。
And if we love God, we have to value those gifts that He gives us.
皆様はそして本当に
하나님이
心から
사랑한다면
神様を愛するなら
우리에게
神
주신
様
것을
が愛を持
우리를
って我
가치
々
있게
に与
만들어야
えて
되는
くださるそ
We
の
honor our Father by honoring those things He does for us and He leaves behind for
受け入れ
us.
なければならないわけですそしてそのようにして神様の贈り物を受け入れることにより素直に受け入れることにより神様に栄光と喜びをしていくわけです
And that's why we're here with the second king.
그렇기 때문에 우리가 이 자리에 지금
Because we love our Father and because of our love, we honor those traditions which our Father left to us.
父なる神様を
우리가
愛し
아버님을
そして
사랑하기
お父
때문에
様が
우리가 이
残してくださ
자리에서
ったこの
그
伝統を
전통을
愛しそ
지켜나가기
れに
위해서
対して
이 자리에
その
이제는
栄光と喜びをしたいがようにこの
We
場に
choose
集
to
まっているわけ
value
です
those things more than the material possessions or the external trappings.
物質的な物質的
우리가
な
그런 가치를 더
物質
가치
的
있게
なものよ
만들기
りは我々はそういった
위해서
内的なも
우리가
の物
선택해서
質的なもの
자유를
を
선택해서
に
이곳에
価値を置いてい
있는
るわけ
것이에요.
です
물질적인 것들을 중요시하는 것이에요.
That is how we maintain our relationship with our Creator, with our God.
我々の神様
With
は
Christ.
우리가 우리의
そして
창조기
キリストと関係を保つためにはこ
그리스도를
ういった
맺어나가는
発想が
방법이
必要
있습니다.
ですそういった必要
And that is what the world needs to be free.
全世界が自由になるためには
그렇기 때문에 모든
このような
세계의 그런 자유,
That is what the world needs to be blessed.
このような態度が必要であり
그렇기 때문에
全世界が
모든
祝福を
세계가
受けるためにはこのような態度を持たなくてはならない
있을 수 있는 것이죠.
Blessing,
祝福
God's blessing
神様の祝福ですよ
is not following what everybody else does.
神様の祝福を得るためにはただ
축복은
他の人
모든
のが
사람들이
やってる
받는 것이
ことを同じくやって
내려가는
は
것입니다.
It's honoring that relationship with God.
神
様の祝福を得るためには神様と自分の関係
가치
を
있게
有効ある
만드는
もの
그런
価値のあるも
분들에게만
のと
내려가는
して作
것이죠.
り上げ
Because if you read the Bible,
聖書を読んで
성경을 읽어보면
God's tradition, God's love,
神
God's
様の伝
blessing
統神様の愛神様の
didn't
祝
go with
福
the majority of God's people.
聖書の歴
하나님의
史を見た
축복은
ら
항상 그
多くの
하나님의
大半の人類に
Because throughout history, God killed the majority of the chosen people all the time.
그리스도로 볼때 생각하는 분들이 많이
He killed them. He killed them when he left to Egypt. He killed them when they were leaving Egypt in the wilderness. After he gave them the nation, he killed more than 90% of them when he destroyed Israel.
出エジプトの時に少数のイスラエル民族はエジプトのエジプトから脱出する時にその少数の神様
The providence of God has always gone through the remnant of his people, not through the majority of his people.
エジプト人々を殺しました当時の聖書の中で当時はそのエジプトの文化が主流だったわけですよねだけれども神様はその主流
God's lineage, God's providence has never followed the majority of the chosen people.
神様の摂理
하나님의
まあこ
축복은
の点から見たとしても神様の摂理を見たときに神様はそういった主流
대부분의
に
It has always been with those people who valued the relationship with God.
で、よりに神様の祝福を受けたい人々はより
More
少
than
数だったん
anything
ですけれ
else.
ども、その人々は神様
For those who kept the faith when everything was taken away from them.
その忠誠心を内的なもの、そういった内的な価値を
많은
維持した
것들을
That has always been the tradition of God's providence.
それは聖書の
God's word.
聖書を読んでます神様が説明する伝統的であり、そういったパターンがあることを発見することができ
관계성을
ます。
가치 있게 생각하는 그런 사람들과 함께 해왔었어요.
And so we find ourselves in the same situation.
なので、
저희가
今
지금
現在
처해
の
있는
我々は
상황은
同じような状態になってい
To
ます
learn the lessons
過
which
去
have been taught in God's classroom.
歴史を通して、そして神様
하나님께서
の
과거에
教室
알려주신
教
가르쳐주신
室
그런 상황들을
の中で我々はこういった人類の歴史のレッスンを学ぶ必要があります。そして悟る必要があります。教訓ですね。
We come here not for any other reason except to honor our Father.
我々がここに来た理由
우리가
は
지금
我
이
々
자리에
の
와
お父様
있는
を
다른 어떤
栄
이유도
光する
아닌
ために来ました
우리의 아버지를 더 높이
それ以外何もありません
올리기
Because we
위해서
honor those gifts that He gave us.
お父様が我々に与えてく
아버님께서
ださっ
우리에게
たその
주신
大きなものに
소중한
我々は感謝
것들을
して
honor
その栄光したいがゆえにここに集まりました
사랑하기
The
때문에
gift of free
자리에
will.
있는 것이죠.
自由意志の贈り物を我々は
자유의지라는 그런 소중한 선물
価値
And with that free will, we choose to love God, our
そして
Creator.
その我々
We
に
choose
神
to
様が
love
我
our
々に
Father.
そしてお父様が我々に
그런
与えられたそ
자유의지라는
の自
선물을
分の
가지고
自由
그런
意志を持って
자유의지로 우리가
我々は
선택해서
自分の自
우리
由の意
아버지를
志で神
사랑하고
様と
우리
本当のお父
아버지를
様を愛するこ
아버지
とを
전통을
学んだわけ
이어나가기
です
위해서 우리가 이 자리에 와 있는
Even if our Father scolds us or sends us out into the wilderness,
お父様が我々の気を怒ったり怒鳴ったりそしてこの
혼내는 일이
こういうように怒ったとしても
우리를
我々は自分の自由意志でお父様を愛します
we choose to be grateful for all the hardships we have
そ
because
して
we
苦難
love
の
our
道
Father.
苦難の道
우리가 아버님을
行っ
사랑하기
たとして
때문에
も我々はお父様を愛することを選びましたなぜかお父様は我々のお父様だ
And we do that with our free will.
そしてそれは誰かが強要されている内容ではなくそれは我々が選んだ内容なわけですそしてお父様が選んだ内容なわけです
That is why we are free people.
なので
그렇기 때문에
皆
우리가
様我々は
자유인이라고 할 수
自由
있는
人
것입니다.
The world and the powers of the world have no power over us.
世界と世界の
권력을 가진
政権が
가지고
我
있다는
々に
것은
対して
그런
何の
세계
力
어떤
も持ってない
사람들도 우리를 지배할 수 없습니다.
Has no power
我
over us.
々は
절대 우리에게
심어.
그 권력을 행사할 수
その
없습니다.
死も超越することができます
Because we know that if we die, then we will be with our Father in heaven.
なぜかと
왜냐면
いうと
우리가
我々は自信があり
영계에
ます
가게 되면은
そして確信があります
우리는
この肉体世界において死亡したとしても
부모님과 함께 할
天国に行った時
것이라는
に
걸
お父様の隣にいることを確信しています
And that's why we are free.
なので我々は自
그렇기
由
때문에 우리가 진정한 자유인이 될 수 있는 것입니다.
That is what happens when you love your Father and you love God.
お父様を
바로
お
이게
父さんをそして神様を愛したらそうなります
사랑하게 되면은 깨닫게 되는 것입니다.
You can live your life without fear.
何の恐怖
두려움
もなく
없이 세상을
人
살아갈 수
生を
있습니다.
自由に生きることができます恐怖から解放された人生を生きることができます
아주
Yeah, it's a very interesting time.
非常に興味深い時代を
중요한
生きています
We live in a time when we see the prophecies in the book of Revelation being fulfilled every day.
ヨハネの黙示録の予言が今この現代において我々の目の前で起きているのを目撃しています
The fulfillment of prophecy is very powerful testimony to the messiahship of true Father.
本当にこの予言が今になってこのようにして現れているのはどういうことかというとそれ自体がお父様がメシアであることを証明しています
And when we see the prophecies in the book of Revelations being fulfilled, we know that we have come to the end of history.
そして聖書のヨハネの黙示録の予言がこのようにして表に現れることを知った時
마지막
に
날이 끝날에 다가가는 것은
この世の中
We
は
have
終
come
末
to the time of judgment.
ことを
그리고 바로
皆さんご
심판의
存
날이
知ですよね
가까워진다는
終
것을
末で言ったら審判の期間です
And for the coming of Christ's kingdom.
そして審判の時代の後にキリストの王国が到来します
And you can see it especially in Korea.
特にその現象を韓国
한국에서
で
이러한 일들을 보게 되면은 잘 이해할 수가 있을 것입니다.
Have you ever seen the Korean peninsula so close to nuclear annihilation?
このようにして韓半島が核戦争の
다
危機
아시겠죠.
ここまで
한국이 핵 위험에 지금 빠져 있다는 것을 다
な
알고
った
계십니다.
ことを見たことがありますか
Yeah. That's what judgment is. If you don't listen to God, you will be judged, especially at the end.
하나님은
終末において審判の言うのが
심판을 알게 될 수 있는 것입니다.
神様の御言葉に従わない者、神様の言うことを聞かない者がその審判の対象になる。
You see, when the end comes and you can no longer save your life, the only thing you can do is repent and try to save your soul.
終末になって皆様、命がもう救うことができない、そのような状況に置かれたとき、
여러분들의 영혼을 구하기 위해서
最後にでき
해결하는
ることは
것도
何でしょうか。心の中で改心して自分の霊魂を作ってくださいと祈祷するしかありません。
I mean, those are the consequences of people's decisions.
그 말은 모든
だけ
사람들이
れどもそ
스스로
の
내린
ような
결정에
結
대한
果になったのは、そのそういった人たちがそのような状況に置かれたのは、その人本人の決断の選択の結果です。選択してきた内容の結果です。
It's unfortunate that when key providential figures make the wrong choice,
説明の重要人物が本当に間違
that
い
so
を
many
した時に
people have to pay the price of it.
多くの人たちが
성적인 핵심
犠
인물이
牲になるのは本当に
올바르지 않은
不幸なこと
결정을
です。
내렸을 때 얻게 되는 그런 결과들을 무고한 시민들이 받는 결과가 생기게 되는 것이죠.
But that's the nature of freedom and free will.
だけど、
그것
これが
또한
自由
자유의지와
と
자유
自
선택의
由意志の
When we exercise our right to choose and our right to free will, we are accepting, whether we like it or not, the consequences of those actions.
我々が自由意志
자유의지 하면서
自由意志を持って何
삶을
かを選択したん
생각한다
だけど、
그러면은
そ
결과에
れに対して
대해서는
責任
이게
と結果的
좋든
なのが
나쁘든
伴う
어쨌든 그런 결과가 우리에게
それ
온다는
は
것은
避けることはで
인정을
きません。
받아들여야 된다는 것입니다.
And that's what happens when you think you can get something for nothing.
何かをただで何かを得るっていうのはありえません。ただというものはあ
뭘
りませ
해도
ん。
부질없는 소용이 없는 그런 상황에 지금 빠져 있는 것이죠.
That's why socialism and communism is only the world of Satan's making.
그렇기 때문에 이제 사회주의와 공산주의는
社会主義と共産主
사탄이
義っていう
만든
ものは
그런
サ
사상이라고
タン
그렇게
が
볼 수
作
없는
り上
것이죠.
げた
Whether you rob your neighbor or you get somebody else to rob your neighbor, that's still stealing.
自分が直接
누군가
隣人のものを
여러분
盗
그
んだ
집을
り、もしくは誰かを通して
건조를 한다거나
盗んだとして
여러분들이
も、
그 집을 쳐들어간다거나
それでも盗みは盗みです。
두 개 다 같은 상황인 것입니다.
That's all socialism is. Socialism is getting somebody else to rob your neighbor.
社
Or
会
you.
主義というのはそういう
사회주의가
こ
바로
とな
그런
んです
것이죠.
ね。
누군가를
とある
통해서
市民が
여러분들의
政府を通して、
소유권을
もしくはそういった
빼앗아가는
権力を通して他の市民の財を盗むっていうのが社会主義の構成
And
で
the price of a nation breaking God's commandment is God's judgment.
す。そのようにして神様の不
하나님의
快の御言葉の一つを守らないというのが
하나님의
神
말씀을
様の
찾지
審判
않고
を
하나님께서
受ける
심판을
受
하게
けざ
되는
るを
것입니다.
得ないような立場になるわけです。
Just look at what's happening in Venezuela today.
ベネズエラは
베네수엘라에서 현재 오늘 일어난 일에 대해서 한번 생각해 보십시오.
The whole nation is in collapse because of socialism.
ベネズエラは社会主義であり、この国全
전
体
사회가
が崩壊
붕괴되고 있습니다. 그 사회주의로 인해서 사회가 지금 붕괴되어 가고 있습니다.
Socialism makes people feel good only for a short period of time.
社会主義とか社会主義体制っていうのは本当に短期間の間何ももうお金がかからなくてどうなりますか。
That's what happened in Venezuela. They ran out of other people's money to steal.
それがベネズエラの
베네수엘라에서 현재 일어나고 있는 일들입니다.
Now everybody's starving. The whole country's
ベネ
starving.
ズエラ政府は人たちが他の人から税金を取って他の人にそれを与えてた
There's no medicine for
それ以
anybody.
上にお金を盗
약도
む
없고
そういったお金が
식량도 부족하고
Now the government's killing its own people.
市民たちは
Every time there's a
治療も受けられ
demonstration.
ない、ご飯も食料もない、何もない。
자기들의 시민을 지금
その
죽이고
ような
있는
行動が
것입니다.
起こり出
데모가
したから
일어날 때마다
政府はベネズエラの政府は今何をしようとしていますか。
자국민들을
市民たちを殺そうとしていますね。数を減らそうとしていますよね。
어떻게 생각하세요?
皆様どう思われますか。
어떤 나라에 살고 싶어요? What kind of world do you want to live
どう
in?
いった国に
어떤 나라에서 살고 싶으십니까?
중국에서 살고 싶죠.
どういった国で暮らしたいですか
But if you live in the kingdom of heaven, that means nothing's free. You have to be responsible for yourself.
天一国で行きたい場合は天一国で行っても先ほど説明したように自由しかある限りそこに対して責任を負って必ず行われます。ただっていうものはありません。
So that's the difficult place where we find ourselves today. Difficult place in which the world is today.
今我々の立場もそう置かれている立場もそうですし全世界で出されている立場は簡単な立場ではありません。難しい世界は
여러분들을 찾을 수 있는 그런 시대에 우리가 살고 있는 것입니다.
So it looks like in the near future there will be lots and lots of difficulties to come.
なのでこの先未来
조만간
に
많은
は
어려움들이 많이
It looks like Asia will be the center of the greatest judgment.
そして困難な
아시아 국가들이
こ
하고
とが
있는
もっと多く
심판의
なる
날에
と思います。特にアジア諸国
중심에
should
서게
prepare
될
for
審
that.
判の中心地になってい
여러분들께서는
ると思います。
미리
なので皆
준비를
様
하는 게
そ
좋을
の
것
ため
같습니다.
に準備してください。
At least if you can survive past this time of tribulation, then if you don't survive, maybe your children will live in God's kingdom.
この審判の期間を通して
시기를
我
심판의
々
시기
自分自身
시기를
本人たちが生き残ることができなかったとしても
최소한 생존을 하는
皆様の
것만으로도
そして我々の
어려울 때
娘
생존을
た
할
ち
수 있는
子孫たちは
있다 그러면은 그게
행스
가장 큰
거꾸로
것일 것이고
이길 것도
또
하나
생존을
되길
못한다
것이고.
하더라도 그런
天国を迎えることがで
결과는
きるでしょう。
아마 여러분들의 후손들이 더 좋은 세상에서 살 수 있는 그런 토대를 마련할 수 있는 기회를 갖게 될 것 같습니다.
So this is a time when we can really be able to rethink what we can do in times of difficulty.
なので困難な時期であるからこ
어려운
そ
시기에
我々
봉착했을
が
때
何を
우리가
できる
정말로
のかもう一度
스스로 어떤 일을
考
할
慮
수
する必要があ
있을지
ります。
다시 한번 생각해 볼 수
Because when we're in difficulty and we feel like we have nothing, and our neighbors have nothing, and people are being, in very difficult circumstances, that's the time where you can practice everything what Christ taught you through Jesus and then through true Father.
考えてみてください。困難な時期に自分は一問もな
이런
く
시기에
て自分の隣
여러분들이
人も一
가지고
問も
있는
なく
것도
て何も
할 수 있는 것들이
何も
없다고
所有物がない
시기에
そのような中で
여러분들이 할 수 있는 가장 좋은
どういった
방법은
状況にな
여러분들이
りますか。皆様お互い取り合いますか。いいえ、そういった状況であるからこそキリストがイエス様がそしてお父様が我々に教えて
실질적으로
くだ
여러분들이
さったその
실천에
兄弟や
옮기는
分け合うこと
실천에 옮겨서
そういった
행동하는
実践をすることので
가장
きる
좋은 시기라고 할 수 있는
機会
You can
機会が
find
来るわけ
an
です。
opportunity to help your neighbor.
隣人を愛する、そして隣人を助けることのできる
실질적으로
そういった機
도와줄 수
会
있는
が
그런
そ
기회를
の
가질
状
수
況
있고요.
を通して出てくるわけです。
Try to save your family member.
自分の
그리고
を犠
여러분들이
牲にしても自分の家族、そして自分の親族たちを
구할 수 있는 일들을 할 수
救おう
있는
とする
기회가 될 수도
そういった実践ができるわけです。
Try to find a way to organize your community so that you can help each other when, or if there's a big national emergency.
そして本当にそういった
큰
国家が緊
국가적인
急事態になった時
긴급 상황이나 재난 상황이 생겼을 때
음.
여러분들 주위에
各
있는
地域のコミュ
작은
ニテ
지역
ィを形成
조직들을
して、
지역 조직들을 잘 움직여서 극복해 나갈 수 있는 방법들을 미리미리 세워볼 수 있는 그러한 시간도
お
가질
互い
수
を助
있다고
け合うため
생각합니다.
の
These are the things which we have power to do,
これが我々が持ってい
이런
る
것들이
力
우리가
です。
현재 이 시점에서 할 수 있는
especially when everything is taken away from us.
本当に我々が何もないとい
특별히
うことは
모든 것들이
これしかありません。
여러분들이 아무것도 내가 가진 게 없다라고 생각할 때
we can find ways to become helpful and useful to each other.
本当にお互いのため
서로에게
お互いを
도움이
助け合い
되고 서로에게 이익이
お互いの
될
た
수
めに
있는 방법을 찾는
隣人を助け合う
같이
そのよう
일을
な
해서
And when we do that, when we find ways
その
in
よう
which
な
we
関
can be
係を
of
作
service
る
to
こと
each
がで
other,
きますその
then
よう
you'll
にして
find that
お互いのために
you're creating and gaining
尽くしたときに
a real type of wealth.
本当にお互いのために尽くすようなその
서로에게
手を
도움이 될
通
수
して
있는
そのよう
그러한
な文庫を築き上げ
점들을
た
많이
そ
찾아갈
こに
때
は
여러분들은 진정한 그 부유의 의미를 찾게 될
意
수
味
있을
のある
것입니다.
価値のある内容が出てくるわけです
With those kind of relationships, not only does prosperity grow,
そういった関
but
係
you become prosperous in love with all of your brothers and sisters.
そのようにしてお
그러한
互いの
관계
た
속에서
めに尽くすこと
자유와
尽くすことによ
번영은
り
이루어나가는
その関係性の中でもちろんこういう外的物的な
단순히 뭐 이루는 것뿐만이 아니라
その範囲も
널리
出すことはできるん
펼칠
で
수
すけれ
있는
どそれよりは皆様のお互いに対する
And
愛
that's
が
where the kingdom of heaven really starts.
でその愛から
그런데 천국이
天
그런
国が出
그런
発するわけです
시점 이런 시기에 진정한 천국이고
When we realize that we can be of service to each other without
완전히 생겨날 수 있는 것이다.
having to ask anybody's permission.
뭐 내가
誰かに強要
허락해서가
される
아니고
ことな
우리가
く本当に
스스로
自分から
스스로
心から
누군가에게 도움이 될 수
隣
있는
人の
방법을
ために
찾을 때
尽くそう
그때
とする
비로소
時
기분이 시작되는 것이죠.
そこから愛が芽生えそこから天国の出発点が出てくるわけです
You know, that's why God leads us into difficulty, because He wants to teach us something.
神様
Give
が
us
我々
something
に
more
このように
valuable
して
than
困
the
難
things
と使命を与えてら
we think we have.
与えられる理由はこのようにして私たちの我々がその内容を悟りそれを通してクリアされ
밀어넣었다가도
そして本
할 수
当に
있습니다.
価値のあるものが何なの
어려움을
かというのを
통해서
気づかせるためにその
우리를 가르치기 위해서
我々に苦労を与えられるわけです
So that's the important thing to remember, that when we face difficulties and trials in this future
本当に
period
こ
of
の先
tribulation,
今後この審判の期間を通して
always be grateful
困難
that God
試練
is
があったとして
continuing
も
to teach us and instruct
皆
us
様は
and
忘れ
guide
ないでく
us.
ださい本当に神様はこの
And
期
to
間を
lead
通
us.
して我々を訓練し
이런 어려운
我々
상황에 봉착했을 때조차도 우리는 그거에 대한 감사한 마음을 가지고
天国の
하나님이 우리에게 이런 고난과 역경을 통해서 또 다른 것들을 우리에게 가르치시기 위해서 이런 고난과 역경을 주셨다고
I think that's the most important lesson to take away.
本当にそれが一番大事な教訓なので
이게
はない
제가
か
여러분들이 명심하시고 들어가시기를 바라는 점 중에 하나입니다.
For all the loss you will have in the near future, whether you lose your money, your children, your wife, your kids,
この
your
先どんなことが
community,
起き
your
るか分かり
city,
ませ
your
ん皆
nation,
様両親を失うことがあります子供を失うことがあります自分の私有
your
そ
country.
のお金資産そして国そして全てを失う可能性は
Just be grateful that God gave you that difficulty so that you could become
だけれどもそんな現
close
実
to
に
God
直面
in,
しながらも皆
in
様
your heart and
神
in your
様に対して
relationship.
感謝を持ってください
그런
そのようにして
순간들조차도
感謝を持つことによって
하나님께
神様
가까이
と
가기 위한
もっと近い関係深い関係を結ぶことができる絶好の機会です
Then even though you lose everything, including your life, you will gain eternal life.
皆様
비록
本当に
많은
この地上世界に
모든
おいて
것들을
全てのものを失ってもそして自分の
모든
命
것들을
を失ったとしても皆様は
여러분들께서는
永遠の命を
영원한
得る
삶을
ことが
얻게
できま
되실
す
수 있는 것입니다.
It's just that simple. That's the way we have to live in times of tribulation.
難しくはありません
간단하게
この
생각하면
審判の時期においてはこのようにして
이게 바로 이런 어려운 지금 이 시기에 우리가 살아가는 가장 좋은 방법이라고 할 수 있습니다.
If you love all the pains and difficulty which comes your way, you will always be happy.
苦難と試練
고난과 역경을
までも愛す
여러분들이
ることができたときに
하고
皆様
나아가게 된다
そ
그러면
してそれに対して感謝をすることが
진정한
でき
행복을
るような
찾으실 수 있을
心を持っ
것입니다.
た
And
時
you'll
皆さ
never
ん
want
本当
for
に
anything.
解放され自由になり
아무것도 필요가 없겠죠.
恐怖っていうものが一切なくなります
Is there anything else to be said?
他に何かもっと言うことは
다른 게 뭐 더 필요할까요?
Anything you want to discuss? Or is that enough? What is it?
뭐더 얘기하고 싶은 거
十分で
있으십니까?
すか
What's up, Ed?
質問したい内容があったり
guidance and this time.
좋은 가르침 감사드립니다.
I have a few questions about
몇 가지
the Korean
질문.
Peninsula.
Sure.
한반도에 관한
What's up?
질문입니다.
as you and also the king
科
have
学につい
been
て質
teaching
問したいん
us,
ですけれども、
um,
と
what happens in the microcosm
未来を
controls
だ
and
ったんですけれ
affects
ども、
what happens in the macrocosm.
小宇宙で起こることが大宇宙で起こる起こるわけです。
I have been studying recently the history of the Korean Peninsula since post-World War II.
で私は第二次世界大戦の時
And
のでクリスマスを勉強してきました。
there's a prevailing view right now in the world
まあ、
that the actions of North Korea
一般的な感じもあるんですけれども、
are important to the future of the Korean Peninsula and the region and so on and so forth. My first question is this.
北朝鮮の言葉を使うどのように影響するか
Can actions in the macrocosm,
見てるんですけれども、
policies and actions of regional countries and players like North Korea, South Korea, China, Russia, the US, Japan, can their actions actually and policies at this time,
起こることが、マクロ
given the tragic failures that have occurred in the microcosm, can their actions at this time do anything to prevent a judgment which I get the impression seems perhaps inevitable? That's my first question.
When Father talked about the path to God's judgment, whether it be through blessing or judgment, he talked about a judgment in a range. You know, he said a quarter of the people of the world could be killed, or 50%. So that's a big range of severity of judgment. So I think that kind of range is the realm of human responsibility. Depending on what we do to correct the mistakes of the Han Mother, you could have a less severe judgment versus a more severe judgment. But I think given the decision that she has made, we are definitely on the path to God's judgment. So the severity is the only thing in question. It's not whether or not there will be a judgment or not.
The next question has to do with mutually assured destruction. Obviously, the balance of nuclear power in this century and the previous century is based upon the idea that no nuclear country would rationally consider attacking another country, at least particularly attacking America, because it would be guaranteed that countries like America, even if attacked successfully with nuclear weapons, have the policy and capability through submarine launches and so on and so forth to destroy the enemy country. And so when it comes to North Korea, a lot of people obviously are very concerned about their growing development of their nuclear capability. But certainly others consider that their number one objective is to survive as a regime and continue doing what they enjoy doing, whatever that is. So therefore, what should we as Americans, who know that the capabilities of our country and can imagine what our generals and president and all the contingency plannings that they are planning, what should we be praying and hoping for in terms of our policies, if assuming that those policies can make a difference?
Well, you know, the idea of mutually assured destruction was what guided American policy during the Cold War, especially in regard to the Russian nuclear power and China's nuclear threat. But for people who follow military strategy and strategic thinking, there's one point in military strategy which has shifted in the last decade, which a lot of people are not aware of in military doctrine. The military doctrine before was that nuclear war is not winnable.
Is not winnable.
But that doctrine has changed, and people are not aware of it. Military planners and military thinkers, they've studied extensively the radioactive accidents in Chernobyl, Fukushima, looking at the concentration of animals in those areas. And the thinking has changed. They actually think they can win nuclear wars. There's been a strategic shift in the thinking of major powers in regard to nuclear warfare. And the shift is nuclear war is unwinnable, cannot exist, to nuclear war is winnable and viable. And that is why the geopolitical and military push at this time is so significantly different than it was during the Cold War. And this is what most of the people don't see or understand. They don't follow the nuances of military strategy and military thinking.
What is North Korea? Why are they more dangerous today than they were 5 or 10 or 15 years ago?
What you got to understand what North Korea is and what Korea is geopolitically and strategically in the world geography. Why is Israel in its location so important? Why does everybody look to Israel? What is it about that piece of land in Israel which makes everybody want to go there?
Holy Land.
Well, if you take out the issue of the Holy Land, why does everybody want to go there?
Prosperous.
You have no military thinkers here in this room. Israel, even if it was not the Holy Land, if it was not all that history, it would still be the most important piece of real estate. Because it's the crossroad of every major great power in the region. If you want to go from one great power to another great power, you got to go through Israel. It's the crossroads of the world for that entire geopolitical area. And this is, if you understand geopolitically and militarily what Israel is in the Middle East, then the point you can understand is geopolitically and military, Korea is Israel in the East. It's the piece of real estate which every great power has to go to if they want to get to another great power. That's why you have the first Israel in the East, and with the Lord of the Second Coming, you have the second Israel in the Far East, in Korea there. These two pieces of real estate are basically spiritually, strategically, geopolitically equivalent pieces of real estate. And so when you see these two pieces of real estate blow up, you know you're at the end of the world. In the middle of God's judgment.
Kook Jin, how is a nuclear war winnable? You said that the thinking has changed.
Yes, I mean they've studied Hiroshima, they studied Chernobyl. They found that the surrounding areas in Chernobyl, wolf populations are normal, the deer populations are normal, even though they have high levels of radiation. There's stable populations of catfish right around the nuclear reactor now, even though they have incredible elevated levels of radiation. Same thing with Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That was studied extensively. After the initial blast, the blast killed people. The radiation poisoning killed people. But all the populations never left there. Populations increased again. Even though with elevated levels of cancer and radiation, people are still living there. So there has been a fundamental shift in military thinking about nuclear war.
人類が人口がどんどん減って人類が滅亡に進むのではないのかっていうのがパラダイムだったんですけれども、現代になってそうじゃなくてむしろ人口がどんどん増えているのを見て、そういうのもあって今その軍事のシンクタンクたち、戦略を立てる人たちの考え方が変わったんです。イギリス
ちょっと違う質問でもいいですか？
I have a separate question.
Sure.
天使と人間の女性との結婚
The marriage between an angel
と、
and a woman.
それから夜の神様の父母性について聞きたいんですけども、
あ、すみません。
夜の神様の父母性、
の父母性
はい、父と母の
の
父母性、夜の神様の父母性。
He's asking the question that he wants to know the nature about. He said the father and mother, maternal nature or parental nature of the god of the night.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason why God destroyed the earth, because the angels fell with human beings and had sex with his children. That's the reason for the fall, right?
まあとりあえず神様
And then the offspring, Genesis 6, the offspring of the angels and the women, when they populated the earth and the world was filled with these mixed beings, that's the reason why he made Noah's flood, to kill them all.
まあその天使と人間の女性の関係に対する答えなんですけれども、その天使と人間の女性が性関係をすることによってとある存在が生まれたっていうんですよね。実際に生まれたっていうんです。まあそれが Can I say Nephilim?
Sure.
まあ聖書で見たらネフィリム族っていうのがいるわけですよね。でそれ聖書にははっきりとそれは創世記6章にその天使と人の女子の間にできた子供って書いてあるわけなんですよね。でそのネフィリムが実際にこの地上に広がったっていう内容があるんですけれども、それがゆえに神様はそれに対して激怒してノアの洪水を起こしてそのネフィリム族を抹消しようとされたっていうことを言われています。
それで今日本のサンクチュアリアで天使と人間が完成したら天使と人間天使が日本大新条件を相続して人間の女性と天使が結婚するという考えが広まっているんです。
日本のサンクチュアリですか。He's saying that there is like this thought which is spreading around in the Japanese sanctuary right now. We don't know where the source is from, but when human actually reaches completion, and then the angels will also be able to inherit and understand and complete the four great realms of heart. And by doing so, the angels and human women will be able to
they're not
marry.
going to be married to human women. The angels are created as servants, and they're fundamentally different in nature to human beings who are God's children.
それはまずありえません。なぜかというと天使は創造された時
The
に
types of partners
根
that
本的
God
に
will
本質的
establish
に
for the angels will be fundamentally in the servant
し
position.
もべとして創造されたがゆえにその創造目的、そして人間の女女性っていうのは神様の娘として創造された、それが創造目的なので、こういうことはありえません。
そうだと思いますので、 絶対に人間と天使がの女性が結婚するということはありえないということが聞きたいんです。
So actually, the reason why he asked that question is because he thinks the same as you. He agrees, and he just wanted to
There's a
reconfirm his.
big difference between angels and human beings.
天使と人間には大きな違いがあります。
People think that because angels are so powerful, they must be greater or better than human beings.
人間がそして人が錯覚する点は何なのかというと、天使っていうのは確かになんかいろいろその力もありますし、なんか優秀な能力を持っていますよね。だから人間が錯覚しがちなのは天使は人間より上にいると。
But this is a completely wrong thinking.
優れてる存在だっていうような考え方があるんですけれども、それは完全に間違ってます。
Because the power of the angels do not come from the angels.
なぜかというと、天使のこういった力とか能力っていうのは天使から出てくるその力の源は天使ではありません。
All the power of the angels have to come from God's divinity.
天使のその力の源っていうのは神様の神聖さから、その神様の神聖な力から来てるわけです。だからそのエネルギーソースが神様の神聖さ。
In that way, basically the angels are conduits or pipes for God's energy. That's it.
なのである意味このエネルギーの源が神様のその神聖さがエネルギーの源なんですけれども、天使っていうのはその神様のエネルギーが流れる単なるパイプみたいな役割なわけです。
No ability to do anything outside of God's energy.
神様のこういったエネルギー
They don't have any energy within themselves to do anything, to automate themselves.
天使っていうのは神様なししては、神様のエネルギーなししては何の活動もできません。完全なるストップするわけなんですよね。天使っていうのは自分自身なんかこの自立して自給自足、その自分のエネルギーを持って自給自足できるわけではありません。
He actually gave a little bit of his divinity to each person he created.
じゃあどういうことかというと、神様が人間を人類を創造したときに、その一人一人に神様は自分のエネルギーを吹き込んだわけです。
That's why free will was given to human beings.
なので神様は人間だけに自由意志っていうものを与えたわけです。
Human beings are the first of God's creation to receive free will.
人間は神様からそういった神聖なるエネルギーをもらったがゆえに、吹き込まれたがゆえに、宇宙の中で初めて自由意志を発動することのできる存在になった。
The angels did not have free will until God created mankind.
天使っていうのは人類が創造される前は自由意志っていう概念も一切なかったわけです。天使っていうものが自由意志に気づくようになったのは人間が人類が創造された後です。
And this is one of the motivations of the fallen angels.
天使たちはそれに気づいて悪なる考え方を持ってしまったわ
Because
けです。
before God created human beings, the angels could not exist apart from God.
なぜかというと、人類が創造される前、天使っていう存在は神様なくしては存在を維持することはできません。
But after God created human
だけれど
beings
も神様が人類を創造
and
した後
gave
に、
each human being a part of his
そして
divinity,
その人間一人一人に神様はそのエネルギーを吹き込んだんですけれども、その神聖なエネルギーを吹き込んだんですけれ
then
ども、
Lucifer realized that he could rebel against God because he could get energy for his existence by robbing God's children of their divinity.
ルシエルはこのような発想をするようになったんです。これで人類が創造されたがゆえに自分はもう神様のエネルギーに頼る必要はないと。神様との関係とパイプを切ったとしても、この人間の中にある神様のこの神聖なエネルギーを食って自分の存在を維持することができるという発想を持つようになったわけです。
That is why humanity is at the top of God's creation.
です。
We are the first to receive free will.
なので本当にこの自由意志を初めて神様から与えられた、そして神様の神聖なるエネルギーが含まれた存在という観点で見たときに、
And God didn't give us His divinity and His free will so that we could be powerful.
人間は創造物の中では最も高い位置にあるわけ
He
です。
gave us His divinity and His free will because He wanted us to love Him.
でも神
He
様
wanted
は
us to choose to love Him.
神様はなぜ人間に自由意志っていうものを与えたんでしょうか。神様は人間がその自由意志を持って人間が神様より素晴らしくなることを願った。人間がそういった動機を持つことを願ったのではなく、人間が自由意志を持って神様を愛することを、自分を愛することを願われたわけです。神様は。
Instead of choosing to love God, we chose to hate Him.
だけれども堕落の悲劇はそこにあったわけです。人間っていうものは神様を愛する選択肢は神様を恨む選択を取ってしまいました。
And instead of being free, we sold our soul and our divinity to Satan to become slaves.
そして人間っていうのは自由になることを選ばないで、自分の霊魂をサタンに売り払ってサタンの奴隷になることを選んでしまったわけです。
And that's why man, which was created to be the pinnacle of God's creation, became the bottom of God's creation.
でこの堕落によって本当は創造世界において最上の立場に立っていた人類が最悪の最低の立場に落ちてしまったわけです。
The source and the origin of the gift of free will is us, not the angels.
その
That's what we must realize as people.
神様から来るこういったエネルギー、根源のエネルギー、そしてこの自由意志っていうのは天使から、そういった力とかそういった内容は天使から来るんではなくて、
So that is our responsibility. We must love the freedom that God has given us, even though it brings us to great adversity in our life.
なので我々の立場としてどういった責任を取らなければならないかというと、本当にどんな困難、どんな試練が来ようとしたとしても、堕落の反対の道を行かなければなりません。神様を愛する選択をしなければなりません。
This is how we honor and love our Father in heaven.
でそうすることによって天にいます我々の父を愛し、それに栄光を期していけるわけです。
And when we people understand that point and love the freedom that God has given us, that is when we create the kingdom of heaven on earth
そして
and
本当に
fulfill God's purpose of
我
creation.
々一人一人がそれを悟って本当に神様が我々に与ってくださったこの自由の貴重さ、美しさ、その価値を悟った時に、そしてその自由になることを自ら選んだ時に、そこから天国というものが広がるようになります。
だからもう人間と天使が結婚祝福を受けるというのはありえないということです。
So I'm just trying to reconfirm. So angels and human will not marry.
I think God has a different plan for His servants. They're different. Angels are a different order of creation than human beings. Angels were created as conduits of God's power
先ほど説明したように天使とい
to
う
help Him
の
in
は
His creation.
神様の娘として
They were not created for love
創造されたの
as their primary
で、
purpose.
そして愛のために創造されてはいません。先ほど言ったように神様のこのエネルギー源のタイプみたいな役割なので、結婚はないです。そしてだけれども神様は天使たちのために別な計画は立てておられることだろうと思います。
お父様が天使を祝福されるということを想像して祝福されるということは聞いたことがあるんですけど、それはそうなんですか？
I've heard that true father actually お父様が天使を創造される。True father creates angels and also bless the angels. There's some kind of mention about that. I don't know.
Father talked about blessing the angels after the purpose of creation is fulfilled. Very different.
お父様が言われたのは天使を祝福したとしてもそれは地上天国天上天国理想世界が解決した後に祝福をするって言われたのであって今祝福するってそういった御言葉ではあります。
今はでなくて
In the proper order of creation, man is above the angels. The angels do not become men.
天国が完成したら祝福を受けるということです。
まあ、祝福を受けるっていうのは結構的
あ
なことですか。
天使同士で
So he's asking, so after we complete the ideal world,
The angels will be in the servant position to man.
and will they be blessed to other angels?
They will
That's his
be
question.
blessed in their servitude to mankind. They will forever be God's and man's servants.
I'm sorry, Kook Jin Nim, I think I mistranslated. When he uses the word blessing, he's
I understand. He's saying they're going to marry somebody.
Oh, he thinks, yeah, he's going to marry somebody.
That's the whole point. That Father was saying that the blessing of the angels will be decided after the purpose of creation is fulfilled. But the purpose of creation is very clear. That there's an order of creation which has to be fulfilled, which is man is at the pinnacle. And that the servant's position is different. And so when you finish the purpose of creation, you're getting a situation where man has fulfilled his responsibility and angels are firmly in the position of servant. That is the fulfillment of the purpose of creation. It's not whether the angels are now happy and have a woman to be with. No, that's not it.
Okay, so the definition of blessing doesn't indicate necessarily meaning.
That's the whole point. When Father says something, you can't necessarily infer the blessing for human beings to be the same as the blessing for angels. There's a different order of creation when it applies to angels. And this is the struggle that we have as we learn to study Father's Word. Is Father, when He speaks to us in so many different levels. And He tells us something which you may hear and you may say, yeah, I really like that. But He's only doing that so it leads you to the next step, and a different level of understanding. It's not so that He's affirming your level of belief at a certain level.
Okay, Kook Jin Nim, I'd like to translate this. May I have a moment? だから一つここで気をつけなければならないのは、お父様が天使を祝福するって言われたんですけれども、この祝福をするというのは必ずしも男と女が結婚するというような概念ではないということですよね。で、
That
見言葉されるんです
humanistic
けれども、
thinking of projecting your feelings onto the angels is exactly why Eve fell.
なので、本当に気をつけなければならない。お父様がいろいろ見言葉されるわけなんですけれども、お父様はいろいろな観点で我々の知らない概念と観点から話されているわけがあるんですよね。だけど人間っていうのは何か一つの御言葉を聞いたとしても、自分なりの解釈をして自分が気持ちよくなったらこれが真理なんだ、この解釈の仕方は正しいんだって勘違いしてしまうわけですよ。で、天使を人間的な観点で見てしまったことが堕落の一つの原因です。エヴァを見てください。エヴァは天使に人情的な同情をしてしまったがゆえにそれに相対基準ができて堕落に至ったわけです。
In order to preserve God's eternal kingdom, we have to teach our women not to be sorry for the angels.
なので、創造目的を達成するために我々は女性たちに何の教育を行うのかというと、天使に対してこのようにした人情的な同情、人間的な観点の同情とか人間的な感情での人情を持ってはならないということです。それを教育しなければならない。
わかりました。ありがとう。もう一つの夜の神様に符号性ということで天聖経の1662ページに神様は創造主でありながら中的な誠の愛の父母です。誠の愛を中心とした重的な父母であるというのです。で、神は父母の中の父母と書いてあります。
Is he asking about God at night?
Yeah, he's asking about the God.
Okay, I'm going to explain the God of night to you.
So it's saying that somewhere in the words it says that God, the God of night, is like the parent or something.
Okay.
I got to take a look at it once more, but I can't translate this.
A lot of people think that I don't know principle because in the end, what Father taught was very different than what we had been taught before Father taught the explanation of God at night and God at day.
多くの人は私が原理を理解してないってこう思っている人たちがいるんですけれども、皆様この夜の神様に関して
If you look at the way Father taught the principle, it seemed like he was leading us away from the Trinitarian concept of which is in Christianity, And we went away from it, and then we went into the teaching that the Holy Spirit is kind of feminine in nature. Oh, that's woman, that's Eve, and that true parents are going to be this man and this woman. And yeah, I heard it like a million times, just like you. And so when Father started talking about the God of night and the God of day, it was very difficult to understand. And I went through the same thing with your confusion, which you're going through. But the God of night and God of day teaching is very simple. Because Father made a very clear definitional explanation of what the God of day is. God of night is versus the God of day. He said the God of night is the God which pre-existed creation. The eternal God. So the God of night is the God before creation. And then he went on to say something else. Father said that he is from the God of night. And when he said he is from the God of night, he said, I existed before I was born. So then, what did he say is the God of day? He said the God of day is the God that appeared after creation. So what does that mean? What is a God that appeared after creation? The God of day is a created being. That's it. That's all it is. And there can be many gods of day. This is the whole pagan panoply of false gods. Every being who thinks that they have divine power on earth and are a demigod or the Han Mother or Zeus or Poseidon or all the 10,000 Hindu gods or the 30,000 Japanese gods. These are the gods of day. So what he was explaining is that in order for God's kingdom to be established, these gods of days must understand that they are not God. That there is only one eternal God who is the God of night, and that is true Father. So this is the change in theology. Because after Father talked about the God of night and the God of day, and after Father said, I am from the God of night, he said, he redefined what his teaching on true parents was. For, we were saying, okay, true parents, it's father and mother, masculine and feminine. He said, no. He said, I am true father. I am true parent. True father is true parent. This is a fundamental shift in the theological teaching that Father made. Because now he is saying that basically he is reaffirming God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit is one God. We went away from the Trinitarian concept and we came right back to it. If you understand the theology of what Father's teaching in the God of night and God of day theology. And the way he explains that distinction is that in God, the primary nature of God is his internal nature and external form. The secondary nature is masculine and feminine. And this is the fundamental mistake which almost 90% of all unificationists make. They identify too strongly with masculine and feminine. When that's the secondary characteristic of God, that is not the primary characteristic of God. God is a unitary being of 형상 and 성상, 성상 and 형상. And his presence is reflected in masculine and femininity. But that there is no feminine God. Because God is primarily masculine. Because he's a subject partner. And so that means the object partner is not God. The Holy Spirit is not a woman. So this is the theological exposition which Father made before he went to the spirit world. And it's revolutionary. And it's very significant. And it's a clear evolution of the teaching which Father has given. And yes, in many ways you can say, God, it's so different than exposition of divine principle or these quotes from the Cheonseongyang. That is because you are fixated on your personal identification with masculine and feminine. It's your problem, not God's problem.
Tell it.
Amen.
Tell it.
I'd like to translate that. No, this is very important, everybody. ちょっとすごい大事な内容で、長く話されたんですけれども、ちょっと整理して申し訳ないんですけど、翻訳させていただきます。まずは、昼の神と夜の神は、男、女、男性的、女性的、陰性、陽性ではありません。それは人間的な解釈であって、それはお父様の解釈ではないということをまず口に言われて、お父様が聖和される寸前に最後にはっきりとこの昼の神、夜の神に対しての定義をくださった内容は何かというと、お父様は私は夜の神だと言われて、私は私自身生まれる前にいたと存在したっていうような見言葉があるわけなんですよね。で、お父様はどういうふうに定義して説明されたかっていうと、夜の神様っていうのは被造世界が創造される前、その被造世界が創造される前に存在した神様のことを夜の神様なんです。じゃあ昼の神様は何かっていうと、昼の神様っていうのは神様が被造世界を創造された後の被造世界のことを言ってるわけなんです。だから昼の神っては言葉で言うんですけれども、被造世界のことを言ってるんですよ。だけれども今人間界がそれで勘違いしてしまったのは、要するに仏教だろうがヒンズー教だろうが神道だろうが、神様はここにいる、あそこにいる、私は神様だ、この石も神様だっていう、何もかもそこに神聖さがあるっていうような解釈をしてるわけじゃないですか。だからこの何て言うんですかね、昼の神様は被造世界で神様が創造されたのは確かなんですけれども、その被造世界、被造物が自分が神様だって勘違いしてるっていうのがここで大きな間違いだったわけです。人間のなのでお父様がここではっきり言われたことは、本当に昼の神がはっきり分からなければならないのは、昼の神は自分は神ではないことを認識しなければならない。神様は夜の神様、一人だけだっていうか、一人だけというか一つだけだっていうのをお父様は言われているわけなんですよね。だからそのようにして昼の神、夜の神を理解する必要があるということで、男性と女性という観点ではあります。それはどうなったかっていうと、結局我々がそういうふうに人間的な観点で神様を勝手に解釈してしまって、そのようにして神様のダイナミックを我々が勘違いして作り上げてしまった結果が今の結果なわけです。なのでお父様はだからこの清掃と形状、そして陰性と陽性っていう原理があるわけじゃないですか。陰性と陽性にあって男性的主体格な神様であるって原理に書かれてますよね。だからよりによって夜の神様っていうのは男性なんですよ。で三域大を見た時に精霊っていうのは女性だって思いがちなんですけれども、お父様の解釈では精霊、その聖父、その聖なる父、聖なる子、精霊っていうのは全部男性で一つで神様なんですよ。それが一つで。
And so this is the point. When you understand this teaching and how Father has led us throughout his life in teaching the principle, and how at the end he makes this revelation, now this revelation and this teaching brings Christianity and Unification Church into one.
本当にいろいろお父様今まで御言葉をされて本当にその中で我々が間違った解釈をしたりもしたんですけれども、本当にお父様が世話される前にこの最終的な神様に対する定義を見たときに、お父様はどういう御言葉を残してくださったかっていうと、キリスト教と統一教会が本当の意味で一つになることが
So
でき
this
る
is what Father is saying. He's saying there's God, the eternal God of night. And he came to the earth as Jesus Christ.
神様、お父様はこう言われました。
Jesus Christ came from the God of night.
永遠なる夜の神様、イエス様は永遠なる夜の神様から来たと。そしてお父様本人も夜の神様から来たと。
And then he's saying that Reverend Sun Myung Moon came from the God of night.
レブレンソサンミョンムーンも夜の神様から出てきたんだっていう言い方があります。
So what does that mean?
これはどういうことを暗示
God is Jesus and Jesus is Reverend Sun Myung Moon.
神様はイエス様であり、神様はイエス様で、また神様は文鮮明先生であるということです。
The conclusion of Father's teaching is that Reverend Sun Myung Moon is Jesus.
お父様の最終的にお父様というキリスト、イエス様だ、そして神様だっていう御言葉です。そういう意味です。
That's what the teaching is indicating.
これがお父様の教義のお父様が我々に教えてくださろうとされた御言葉です。
Do you understand?
理解されました。
だから最初の天聖教の神様というのは夜の神様と判断していいということです。最初の天聖教に書いてある神様は夜の神様だということでいいということです。
ちょっとこれもう一度言ってみないと。He's asking, so these words from the Chonsongyang in page 1662. He's asking whether this description of God is indicating.
That's the whole point. When Father talked about the Chonsongyang and the words he says, in that book you should not touch one word because that one word may save somebody. The point is when Father talks, he talks at so many different levels. He talks from the level of a kindergartner to the level of a PhD and everywhere in between. And then even above a PhD.
いろいろな御言葉があって、なんかいろいろな観点でなんかお互いになんかこうぶつかり合うような定義の内容も出てるんですけれども、なぜそうなるかっていう。
And when he talks, when he reveals truth, if he did it in 1970, said something, it was a foundational level for something he's going to say in 2017.
お父様が天聖教の一言も編集するなんて変えるなんて言われた内容はなぜかというと、お父様をそれでお父様が言われたのは、この天聖教を読んでたら一人が
So every word that Father speaks is absolutely the most precious word in the world. But that word has many, many levels of understanding, and if you just read it on the surface, you can be misunderstanding what Father is saying in light of later revelation.
解釈をしてしまう結果になることはあるわけです。で、また理解しなければならないのは、お父様は例えば1970年代に言われた御言葉っていうのは、時には次の時代のための御言葉であるかもしれないわけだったりする時もあるわけなんですよね。
Father was always the fisherman. He always used bait.
だからお父様っていうのは釣りが好きですよね。お父様っていうのは本当にこの
He knows what you like.
釣りをするには
He knows what you want to hear.
ベイトですよね。この餌をつけるんですけれども、その魚が好きな餌をつけなければならないわけですよね。で、投げるときに同じところに投げるんじゃなくて、
You have to understand that many of the things which Father is writing at different times is bait.
なのでそういうふうに考えたら、お父様は御言葉をされるとき、そのようにいろいろな餌をつけて、そしていろいろな人を救うためにいろいろな角度で、いろいろな深さで、いろいろな色で、いろいろな匂いで、いろいろな違う餌を持って人類を、すべての人類を救われようとされて、その御言葉をすべてここに結集されているわけです。
fulfillment of God's will. and fulfillment of the purpose of creation. And this is why when you look at the debate, you can be misled in the final understanding that Father wants to lead you to.
で本当にこうやっていろいろな餌といろいろな角度からそしていろいろな
모든 말씀에
内容があるがゆえに本当にそれを一つの観点だけで見てしまってはお父様の御言葉を間違った解釈をしてしまわざるを得ないんですよね。でそれが本当に多くの信徒の中で起きた現象でありそれが現実なんです。じゃあどうすればこういうのを避けることができるか間違った解釈を避けることができなければならないかというとお父様はいつも最終的な御言葉を出して何を話されたかっていうことです。神様の創造目的の完成、胸の完成、その観点が、それが全てのこういった、餌って言ったらちょっとあれなんですけれども、観点とかを集結する軸になるわけです。だからそこから全てを見て理解する必要があるのであって、一つ一つ御言葉、それなし、軸なしに御言葉を理解してしまったら間違った解釈をします。
だから夜の神様は父であり父母であるということで間違いない。
So is the God of night the father and the parent?
The God of night is the original Father. And He is the original Sangsang and Hyeongsang and the original masculine and feminine.
夜の神様は
He is the Father in heaven who created everything.
おられるオリジナルのお父さんです。
The only
そしてオ
true
リジナル
God.
聖相と形状のオリジナルであり、陰性と陽性のヤンと陰のオリジナルであります。父です。父であります。男性です。父です。
わかりました。はい。
わかりました。
ありがとうございます。ありがとうございます。
We've got Carrie here.
When we look in the Chung Sung Gyang and Father's words, and he talks so much about how the man represents God's plus characteristics, the woman represents God's minus characteristics. I think when I hear you expressing this area, you seem to talk a lot about in terms of the Messiah is coming from the God of night, and and the bride is from the God of day. But when we're talking about men and women in general, which is the case with a lot of the Chung Sung Gyang and Father's words, then isn't it different than the God of night and the God of day? Because
There
we're
is
not
a
talking about the
difference.
Christ in this
Because
situation.
what we're talking about for human beings between men and women, men are supposed to become the body of God.
Right.
And the women are supposed to become the bride of Christ.
Right.
So God is the source, the origin, He's the brain, He's the center. And we, as our responsibility, we're supposed to fit in God's body, whether we're a muscle or an organ or part of the central nervous system. We're supposed to fit into a very specific role in God's body. And our object partner, once we inherit that, is God's bride. Because all the women in the world, when we become God's body, when the men become God's body, are actually married to God. So the purpose of creation is that the men are supposed to fulfill God's substantial body on earth. And the women are supposed to fulfill God's substantial bride on earth. That's why the Messiah comes to be the bride of every single woman on earth. You're all supposed to marry God. That's the purpose of creation.
この創造目的は何かというと、神様は男っていう存在を神様の具体的な体として創造されて、女性は神様のキリストの神父の立場として創造されたわけです。どういうことかというと、神様の体である男性は神様の体の一部分であるということです。それは手であるかもしれないし、心臓かもしれないし、肺かもしれないし、もう腎臓かもしれないしということですよね。でだけれども全ての女性はそういった神様と神様の神父の立場なわけなので、なので、要するに全ての女性、こう考えたときに、全ての男性は神様の体の一部分、全ての女性は神様の神父の立場ならば、こうやって
모든 여성은
神様を中心とした
말을
その人間の旦那さんと結婚することに祝福を受けることによって神様と全ての女性が結婚しているわけです。その実態を成しているわけです。
What does it carry?
But when you qualify though that Jesus and Father are the body of God in a unique capacity than any other man,
Well, they define themselves differently. They're not the body of God. They are God. Father said, I am of the God of night. He's basically saying, I am God. Just the way Jesus said. Jesus said, I am the way and the path and the only way to the God, to God in heaven. Because He is God. That's the fundamental difference between the Christ head and everybody else. The Christ head is God. That's why the mission in which the Christ head on earth is fundamentally different than all of us who are to be part of God's body and God's bride. There is only one Christ head to whom all the women are married.
I think we're still figuring this out.
Yeah, it takes a lot of thinking to wrap your head around what Father was saying. But the whole point is that the theology went like this. It went from going away from the understanding that Jesus is God to saying He's a man, and at the end He led us right back to saying Jesus is God, and guess what? I'm God. And so all the time when Father was leading us around saying, you guys are worshiping Jesus, He was saying, hey, I'm God on earth, what are you doing praying to Jesus? I'm right here, I am Jesus. That's what Father was saying.
なのでどういうことかというと、イエス様もお父様も神様であり、神様のマインドみたいな存在、そのマインドをですね、みたいな存在であって、
This is different than you were taught because He led you that way. Because He wanted to teach you that you were serving God on earth.
神様の体のどっか神様
And you weren't ready for it.
であるわけです。
You weren't ready to understand it, to receive it. And that's why He brought it to you at the end.
男性それ以外の男性たちはみんな体の一部分に
So Father, as the Christ head, brings the seed from the God of night for all of us.
He is the God of night, and so the seed of the God of night comes directly through Him. That's the point. That's what Father is trying to teach you at the end. He is saying, I am that eternal God.
なのでお父様が世話される前にそれで結論をつけられたのは私はその
That was the declaration of the God of night, God of day theology.
夜の神様の種を持った存在、その神様である。それがお父様の
And this is why it's so difficult to understand. It's an incredible journey. We went away in a circle and we came right back.
We went all the way around.
We went all the way around in the circle. Father led us in this life all the way around in the circle. Right back to the origin. That Jesus is God.
ちょっと分からなくなった時があるんですけど、結局は
And so it is you who are misunderstanding. It is not I.
結局お父様は最初から出発点と最終
I will say firmly that 90% of the members do not get what Father was teaching. All the theologians and all of them. Their PhDs are worthless.
教授であろうが一生懸命研究しているシックであ
I
ろうが
wonder,
90何%以上は
Father really, gave us a great textbook, right?
解釈している
And
と
I
私は
wonder, since this declaration is so important and overrides so many things,
It's a wonderful story tale. You read those 8 textbooks, you can follow how He led you all the way around in the big circle to come to the truth that He's God. There is no better exposition of that circle which He led you than the 8 great textbooks.
本当にお父様はとある原点から周りに回って御言葉されて、だけれども
But why
最終
did
的
he
に
make
結
it?
論の原点
Not
と同
like
じ
why don't we have some words of the Father concerning the not God
You
Almighty?
do! You can have his direct witnesses, the second king.
Okay. Whoa.
He is the living word of true Father. He is the disciple who is Father's son. Who God You gotta understand the word is living. Christ is living. The seed of God is living. It lives in the spirit and in the flesh. And that's the fulfillment of Christ's kingdom on earth, is the lineage of God.
가르치는 것이죠. 왜냐면은 이대 왕이
So my position stays the same. It is you who are mistaken and not I.
私は自分の立場、自分の考えに自信があります。私の解釈が正しいの
What is it,
で
Karen?
あり、皆様の
I apologize in advance.
You're not the only one who does it, believe me.
But this is my big chance because you're right there. As I see it, we have a little bit of a difficulty. I believe everything that you are saying. I believe it's the truth. Okay? The difficulty as I see it is what this last revelation, I have a hard time finding Father's words on it. I find a little bit here, a little bit there.
That's your problem, because he gave you his final word. It's called the second king.
Yeah. But,
He's the living word of Father.
and I believe that.
That's
And
the point.
I fully embrace it. But we still have, we made a big deal about those 8 great textbooks.
Sure.
Okay?
And if you understand the 8 great textbooks and understand it in its totality, it confirms everything which I'm saying.
And I believe you, but but there's still a difficulty as I see it, because
So keep studying, you'll find it.
is that people are going to say the same thing. Oh, we're interpreting Father's word.
That's the whole point. It doesn't matter what they say, because the truth is the truth, and in the end, it really doesn't matter. It's not about what the people say. It's about what God says. You think that God left the apostles and his disciples to confirm what the priests of Jerusalem and the Jewish priests say at the temple?
No.
No! He left his disciples to testify to the word that he gave them. So that the disciples become the living word of Christ. And that is the responsibility of his disciple who is his son, is to be his living word.
イエス様の場合を見たとしても、そのイエス様の弟子はイエス様の生きる王としてそういった立場だったわけですよね。で、今二大王の立場はどういう立場かというと、誠のお父様の息子の立場であると同時に。
That is the whole point. That is why you cannot inherit the God's kingdom. You cannot understand Father's word except through his lineage.
우리는 절대로 이해할 수 없습니다. 우리가 리니지 혈통을 이해하지 못한다면은 결국은 아버님의 말씀, 하나님의 말씀은 완성이 될 수 없는 것이죠. 그렇기 때문에 여러분들이 명심해야 될 것은 하나님의 혈통, 아버님의 혈통을 믿고 따르는 것입니다.
아주.
Did you have something you wanted to say, Gideon?
While we're on the topic of Trinity and also what was mentioned earlier with angels,
You guys love the difficult topics, don't you? Go ahead, what's up?
So, Divine Principle in chapter 2, section 1, talking about the angels. This is something I have a lot of trouble with. It mentions, it references the Bible where it says, let us create man like us.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And again, this is something I never heard about sanctuary people talking about this. In the common Christian world, it's believed that
キリシタンで、
man is coming from the image of the Trinity.
キリスト教は
And there's actually been a huge argument in Christian history
In
between
Christian theology, they don't have a clear understanding of what is the role of man in God's creation. And they don't have a clear understanding of why man is above the angels in God's creation.
So what I was going to say, what the divine principle says is that the divine principle says that God wasn't talking to the Trinity. Actually, God was talking to the angels. So it's basically saying that man is coming from the image of God and the angels. And throughout my study, I find that
man is coming from the image of God, not the angels.
But that, my point is, that's what the divine principle actually does say, which I find very hard to agree with. So, because it wouldn't make sense to come from the angels.
Angels were created as the servants of God.
Right.
They weren't created to be in a relationship with God.
Right.
That is not their primary purpose. The primary purpose of man is to be God's object partner. The primary purpose of the angel is to be God's servant, conduits of God's power. But God did not create man for the purpose of power. He created man for the purpose of relationship and love, which is why we are so fundamentally powerless, but yet most powerful in relationship to God.
I totally agree with you. It's just that the divine principle didn't say that, and
Father has led people all the way around and to deepen their understanding. He leads us in circles so that each time we go around the circle, we come a little bit closer to God.
So when you think that's like a formation stage,
I think Father has so many nice pieces of word out there which catches people at the level which they're at, and it brings them in, and it makes them stretch, it makes them grow, it makes them their understanding develop to a level which eventually they can come to really understand how to have a true relationship with the eternal God, the Creator. That's where Father is leading us.
So you're saying that was like a process?
Father is leading us through a process, just like the entire Bible is a process of God having a relationship with the human creation, trying to teach them and instruct them how to have a relationship with the eternal God. Father is doing the same thing through His Word. Well, the more you understand, the more you think, the more we debate, I can tell you, the more you debate, you're going to get closer and closer and closer to what I'm telling you. It's not going to go the other way. I can't understand Japanese. You have to wait for the translator. What's he saying?
ちょっとこう一つずつ文章を切って話していただければ助かるんですけど。
コチニ様の言うように、イエス様もお父様も夜の神様から来られた方であるということを信じますし、本当にそうだと思います。
He really believes that Jesus and Father came from the God of night and that they are all one. He believes what you said.
ですけれども、同時に昼の神様でもあるということの理解でよろしいでしょうか。
But at the same time is そのイエス様とお父様は同時に昼の神様なのかという。
同時に昼の神様でもあるという理解でもよろしいでしょうか。
So his question is it okay to understand that God and Father and Jesus at the same time is also the God of day?
No. The God of day is a created being. So the purpose of God's creation when He talks about God of night and God of day is he's leaving his lineage as the god of day who is absolutely united with the god of night. And that's how you get the vertical connection between the god of night and the god of day. And that vertical relationship between the god of night and the god of day is what makes the kingdom of heaven on earth.
Amen.
So if you understand the teaching of God of day and God of night, Father is the God of night. And so the second king is the God of day who is united with the God of night. And that's the lineage of God. The true gods of day are the kings of Chanulguk, who are united in blood and in faith with the eternal God of night.
すみません、僕の通訳は間違ってるかもしれないというのを了承してください。だけれども、僕が理解した限りでは、夜の神様が上にいて、その下に昼の神様が創造物として、被造物としているわけなんですよね。じゃあ、お父様は夜の神様ですよね。夜の神様が創造された昼の神様って言ったらどういう存在かって言ったらその子供、その血統、二大王様が昼の神様の立場に立つわけです。その夜の神様の創造物、創造物って言ったらそうなんですけど、昼の神様から創造された存在であるというふうに。だからこの概念から夜の神様から来る重的な血統、神様の血統がその血統、実体的な肉体的な血統として息子を通して現れてこの世の中にこの地上に定着するっていうコンセプトが出てくる。コンセプトというかそういう理解です。
そしたら人間としての文鮮明先生は昼の神様ではないそうですね。ということでしょうか。
その肉体的なお父様の体っていうことですか。人間として。So he's asking that that means that true father's human form is not a part.
The best way to understand the second king, he is the body of God on earth. He is the true Pope. The second king is the true Pope. He is Christ's physical body on earth. That's the way you understand the kingdom.
どのように大きな理解するかというと、二大王がキリストのこの地上におけるキリストの実体的な体と理解してください。
二大王が昼の神様ということでよろしいですか。
God's body on earth.
He's God's body on earth, and He's the God
of day.
はい、そうです。昼の神様。
라고 이해를 하시면 되겠습니다.
아주
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm not going to ask you about the angels.
Okay. Good, because they're servants. They're not supposed to be talked about all the time. They're supposed to be serving.
There you go.
And not about God of day and God of night.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you a very practical thing.
Okay.
And it might be kind of stupid question. But just I was wondering, so I'm hearing that the market is going to crash.
Mm-hmm.
And when market crash,
もうちょっと現実的な質問をしたいんですけれども、
I understand that
今のマーケットですね、市場が
I think it would be best if we have no debt. Not right? If we are debt free.
The biblical teaching on finances is never to be in debt to anybody.
Yes, but in the reality, we will have, some has like lease with his apartment and also like car loans or mortgage. So what will happen to those things?
Well, that's why Christ teaches you not to be in debt. So that's why the king has been talking about tiny houses.
Yeah,
So instead of having a big house, buy a tiny house which you don't have to borrow money for.
Yes, I understand. But already we have, then what will happen when market crash?
Well, when market crashes, the value of your house will also crash and you'll be stuck with a lot of debt. So it's probably smart to sell your house and get a tiny house where you won't have debt.
How about the lease with the house?
결혼은 성서에도 나와 있듯이 기준을
Yeah, I think that problem you have to solve yourself in your husband.
짓지 않는 것이 가장 중요한 것이고 그 중에 하나가 뭐 큰 집보다는 작은 집을 얻어서 작은 집을 사는 것도 하나가 될수 있는 것이죠. 실용 현실적인 답을 하자라고 합니다.
So we know how this is going to go. You're going to ask many questions, and I'm not going to change anything I say. That's good. It's probably going to go that way for the next 50 years.
What
is it?
Many people have been called the Antichrist. But from what you just shared, then the Pope would be the Antichrist.
He is certainly an Antichrist. He's against God's true Pope.
현재にその二代はその真なる誠なる教皇だっていうような表現もされたんですけれども、その質問に対してじゃあそのアンチキリストはこのカトリックの教皇がアンチキリストだって理解してもいいですかっていう質問に対してはいそうですと言われました。
Okay, what is it?
ちょっと銃規制の件ですけど、日本は銃に対してすごい厳しい国なんです。
What is he saying?
ガンコントロール。
あ、すみません。
銃規制に
はい。
ついてお聞きしたいんですけど。
He has a question about gun control and gun regulation.
Okay.
アメリカに来る前は二大王様の話の中で銃は。
すみません、ちょっと聞こえます。前の方に来ていただき申し訳ありません。
日本にいるとき、二大王様の話の中で銃規制の件を聞いたときは心に銃を持てっていう意味合いで取ってたんですよ。
When the second king came to Japan and given his words about that you have to actually bear weapons, he understood it that it was like holding a gun or a weapon of the heart.
No, it's an actual gun.
Yeah, I think he has a question after that.
今回こちらに来て直にお話を聞いて、
coming here and listening
いやそうじゃなくて実際に持って戦う意思を持てということでお話を聞いたわけです。ご存知のように日本は70年間平和ボケしてるんです。
It was really a realization to me because in Japan, for the past 70 years, Japan has been a very peaceful society. But actually, when I talk about myself, I'm a gun mania and I'm a gun guru. And I was crazy about guns and I really adored America.
持ったことがないから思うのかもしれないですけど、子供たち、このアメリカの方に失礼ですが、700年、500年ぐらい歴史のあるアメリカで銃社会のアメリカでやはり未だに暴発事故というのがあるわけですよ。私もそろそろ孫ができる時代なんで孫の成長にあたってもしかしたら本当に銃を持って戦わなきゃいけないそういう時が来るかもしれない。だからやっぱり不安はあるわけですよ。その時私はもう死んでいないかもしれない。でも孫たちは銃を持って戦うわけですよ。だからその孫が私の今度はひ孫に銃のコントロールの仕方を教えられるかどうか、その銃があったがために死ななくていい幼い命がなくなっていくんじゃないかそういう心配があるわけですよ。それは今まで銃を持ったことがない国の人間ですから、アメリカなんかで言わせればそれは親の責任だって言われればそれまでなんですけど、実際にそういう場面が来るんでしょう。それがお聞きしたいです。
そういったことがあり得るのか、可能性があり、その暴発事故で自分の孫とか、
その心に銃じゃなくて実際の銃なのかですね。
Okay, he kind of explained it wrong, but I hope I understood his main point correctly. So what he's worried about is that we're going to be bearing weapons and having weapons around the house, and in reality what happens is that there's accidents and people die of accidents because of accidental discharge. And now he's been living in a society without guns, and let's say he's going to start bearing guns, and he would have to teach his children, and his children would have to teach their children about how to control guns. But still, he is anxious about the possibility that there will be death due to accidental discharge. And his question is, do you think that is a possibility?
That's the whole point of being a king. The whole point of being a king is to do dangerous things and have dangerous things because you're the sovereign. And that's part of God's freedom and responsibility that He's giving you.
それが王たる者の担わなければならない。二手言えばそうなんですけれども、責任です。王っていうものは自分の主権を守らなければならないし、その主権を守るにあたって武器っていうものは必要になってくるし、武器が出てきたらリスクっていうものが必ずあるものなんです。だけれども本当に自分が王だっていう認識を持っている。主権っていう感覚がいたら、そういった責任は自分が担っていかなければならないっていうような認識を持つのが、
as God's creation, who receives God's gift of free will and responsibility, I choose to love that gift from God even if it kills me.
なのでどういったメンタリティが必要なのかというと、神様がこのようにして自由意志と責任を我々に贈り物として与えられたわけなんですね。で本当に神様を愛される人ならば、そのようにして神様の自由意志と責任という贈り物を自分が選ぶ立場を取ることによってなんかいろいろリスクが出たとしても、死んだことがあったとしても、自分は神様を愛する、こういった贈り物を受け入れて神様を愛して喜びを期していく、そういった考え方が
As a child of God who's inherited God's sovereignty, I choose to love the gift that God gives me even if it kills my children.
私は本当に神様の誠の息子として神様からこういった贈り物を与えられたわけなんですけれども、それを受け入れて自分の子供たちが死ぬような危険性があったとしても神様を愛する、そういった姿勢です。
As a child of God who received God's gift of freedom and responsibility, I choose to love that gift that God gave me even if it kills my wife.
私は神様の息子の立場として神様から与えられたその自由意志と責任という贈り物を本当に私は自分の父を愛しているがゆえにそれを受け入れ、自分の奥さんが死ぬような可能性があったとしても神様の誠の息子としてそれを受け入れ神様を愛する。
This is what God is teaching us. He is teaching us that we must choose to love Him and love what He gives us.
神様は我々が神様を愛することを願っておられ、そのようにして我々を育ててくださっているわけです。
And when we love the things that God gives us and we love the kingship that He gives us, then that love creates the kingdom of heaven on earth.
神様が我々に与えられた贈り物それが地上天国をなす
하나님의 창조 목적을 달성해 나가는 것, 그것이 우리의 가장 큰
Okay?
사명이다.
Thank you. Finished, right? No more questions. I'm done.
자, 이것을 드렸습니다. 자, 오늘 너무 귀한 말씀을 우리에게 주셨습니다. 경배 드리도록 하겠습니다. 전체 차렷 경배. 바로 큰 박수.
Thank you, translators. We have to move everything back. Never boring.